Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delegro, your host, as usual. And my guest today is Lisa Novak. She is a HR executive, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being invited.
You know, I almost called you Kim Novak. She's a famous actress, right?
It happens from time to time. It usually ages those of us who know who Kim Novak is, Paul, but sure, yep, I get it.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize that. She's an older one, so I'll speak for myself. I'm a little older, so I do remember her.
Same.
So, well, welcome to the show, Lisa. Great to have you. And, looking at your bio, you have a lot of experience around HR, doing fractional HR, and interesting how, I'm always interested in how a fractional HR works. Like, explain that to the audience a little bit before we get going here.
Absolutely. Well, let me talk a little bit about kind of how it evolved for me. And that is that for about the last, couple of decades plus, I have had the luxury and opportunity to work in the very fast growing technology field in the Austin, Texas area as it evolved. And
great place.
It really has been. What an interesting change I've gotten to see and be a part of. And I work primarily with startup, high growth technology companies for the last several, like I said, couple of decades, and gained a lot of insights and experience that I wanted to be able to share more broadly. And so a few years back, I decided to start a consulting firm, and that rolled into being more of a fractional opportunity. And for me, how I describe the fractional consulting function, as you were asking, is my clients, or the majority of my clients, get a fraction of my time. And so they're getting a component of, or a piece of the my time, but they're getting all of the advice, the experience, and the knowledge from all of my years.
Yeah, so you kind of hit on that, but what are the main reasons why a company would want a fractional HR specialist versus a full-time? I mean, obviously money may be the obvious one, but what are the other benefits?
Money's very much the obvious one, but maybe not necessarily in the obvious way, because it's not necessarily about saving every penny or spending less on the function. It's spending it in the right way. And what's happened throughout my career, of course, is that companies who are going through that next stage or that scaling stage or getting to their next stage of growth where they know they need some sort of HR expertise as well as HR operations, what they'll do is try and combine that into one person. So they're neither getting the heavy tactical function that they're wanting or the strategic, experienced executive level insight. It's usually someone in between trying to be scrappy and figure out both sides. And so by working with a fractional kind of function, you're able to spend those same dollars in a different way and be able to bring in kind of both or any area that you're needing most based on where you are in your scaling and where you are in your growth, what that specific company's needs are. And that's something that I've learned early on and said over and over again. If you've worked for one startup company, you've worked for one startup company, because they are all very different. They're based on, what market they're in, who's leading them and in what capacity, what their goals are, what their strategy is. And so HR and the functions and programs under HR need to be different based on those criteria or those factors. Sure. And that fractional environment allows us to be able to scale, allows us to be able to hire and move as they need, as they grow.
Yeah, and you got me thinking here. I mean, one of the benefits I would think would be, you've got all this vast experience with all these different companies that you can lend to a new startup, right? Saying, hey, I've done this before. These are the things, you should be doing. Am I kind of online there?
You got it. My value is not in the number of hours I work for you or you pay me for. My value is in my knowledge and my experience that I can bring to the table. Most of the time, I'm working with CEOs who have done this once or twice, or maybe they're on their third, round of attempting a startup. I've done it 12 times.
Oh,
Been
wow.
able to see what's worked, what's not worked, where we've tripped, where those pitfalls are, what's required at each stage of growth. And again, how we need to look at that differently for each company and what their vision is.
Yeah, I mean, that's invaluable information, right? I mean, to say you've done it before, uh, you know, well, that's assuming that the company listens to you, correct?
That is. The other thing that I found is on a fractional or consultative basis, they tend to listen more. And I think that's because it's their responsibility to really understand my experience and value my experience in a different way. It goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier when companies are trying to find someone who's both administrative, tactical, functional, as well as strategic
Sure.
and can be that guide. It's really hard to get both of those functions out of the same person, right? I am not going to be your best person for keying in payroll each week.
Yeah,
I've got a different vantage point. And so to be able to uh, gain each of those insights or each of those functional needs and, at a fractional cost, and you're getting more of the right vision, the right guidance and the right,
sure.
let's face it, productivity from each of your team members.
So, how did you land your first fractional role? Do you remember that?
I do. It's really interesting because I've had the honor of working for so many startup and high growth companies throughout my career. I've also met a lot of VCs and a lot of PEs who are those funding partners who are constantly working with new startups and new leaders. And so I knew that my business was going to grow through those relationships. So when I first opened or launched my business, I was going to, 2 coffees, a lunch, and a happy hour every single day with every VC and PE partner I've ever met over the years. And
Yeah.
every single one of them I would sit down with and they would say, "Oh my gosh, Lisa, you're going to be great at this. This is so up here. This is exactly what you should be doing. We're going to put you on our vendor list." Vendor list? What? You mean at the top of it? What vendor list? You're just going to hand me to your clients, and that's how my business is going to, or your portfolio, and that's how my business is going to grow. Well, fun fact, none of my business came that way. It's
Oh, wow.
yet another interesting thing. The more startups you work at and work for, the more you learn about the ecosystem. Well, I get to learn with my own startup as well. That's not at all where my business came from. Where all of my business has come from is through my partners, through the people I've worked with in the industry, healthcare benefits brokers, recruiting firms, performance management systems, HR payroll system providers. They work with their clients who ultimately realize they need more and more strategic and advisory services than, say, a benefits broker is able to provide across the HR landscape. So those introductions have been the most valuable. And that is exactly where my first client came from.
Yeah, no, and you got me thinking. Just it's like looking for a job. I don't know
It's
if I.
so much like looking for a job.
I always tell people when you're looking for a job, you basically have one product, and that product is you. You're a salesman at that point, right?
And now more than ever, my product is me. Now I
Yeah.
have a company in which my product is me.
Yeah. How long you been on your own?
I launched about 2.5 years ago. I left my previous job coming up on 3 years ago and took about 6 months to build what I was going to build and define how I was going to launch, create those processes and programs that I thought were going to be most effective, and then completely pivoted because that's not at all how it went and how my business was going to build itself. So.
When you say pivoted, what did you pivot from and
Yeah, like
to?
I said, I thought that my market was going to be through the
Okay.
financiers, if you will, through the private equity, through the venture capital firms, and it really wasn't at all. It was through those partners, through those vendors, if you will, within the HR ecosystem.
Yeah. So you had to start networking your tail off, right?
That's right. That's right.
And you're still probably doing it too.
I do. I will say I've learned, like everyone does as a leader, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And some of those lessons came very quickly. I learned within a few months and after just a couple of invoices that I should not be my own accountant. And so I brought in an accounting partner
That's
early
funny.
on. I've also learned that while I'm not bad at the business development and the marketing and the, voice piece of what I do here, but it's also not what I'm best at or where my time is the most valuable. It's certainly not where my time is the most valuable to my market, to my
Yeah.
clients. And so I've also partnered with some folks who have helped me with the business development side of my business as well. It's an area I'm still learning.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well,
just when you think you're getting bored with your career, maybe open your own business and start learning even more.
yeah. And you hit it right in the head. It's good to know your strengths and weaknesses. Now, have you thought about, and again, I don't know if this even makes sense, like putting a team together, like someone's a COO, someone's an accountant, someone's a sales development, maybe put a team together and go in as a package where it'd be like almost like a full-time package, but each of you gets a little piece of it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I do have partnerships with some other what I call kind of fractional conglomerates, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah. It's a great way to put
primarily
it.
primarily in very specific areas. One in particular I work with is focused in InfoSec and the information security sector. And so we've got experts in finance and HR, in technology, in the build, in product management and product development, all around that area. And we can certainly come in as a shared, full circle first full cycle team, or we can be compartmentalized and broken off as each of those potential partners or companies need.
Yeah. From a
So it's
compensation.
honestly, Paul, it's a really interesting question because I think it's something that not only am I starting to see more in my second and third year of business, kind of people tapping me on the shoulder saying, "Hey, do you want to come join this network of that you're
Sure.
describing?" I really think that is signs of an evolution in how people are doing business, because this is a new-ish concept. And so it's going to change just like any other new market evolves and changes as it grows. And I think this is one area that's going to be a potential important way of identifying those new clients, identifying those new partnerships as being part of those smaller kind of conglomerates and fractionals or conglomerates of consulting.
Yeah. And unless you're heavily funded, who can go out and like a COO, for instance, who can go out and spend $300,000-$400,000 on a COO for a startup sometime? There's not enough to keep them busy at the beginning, and that's just a lot of money to be spending. So it makes sense what you're doing.
Absolutely. And we're seeing, again, this is such a growth area. We talked about the gig economy prior to COVID even, and then COVID really made that so much more accessible and realistic, and really got it kick-started. And we've seen growth in that, the fractional, the consulting, the contract, the direct gig economy over the last 4 or 5 years, that we're seeing a change in how business is going to be done. And I think you're exactly right. Why would a 10-person company want to hire a $350,000 COO? And yet they need that skill set, because you're not
Right.
going to get to a 100-person company without it. So how do we scale without spending all that money? Well, this is how you get the talent, the skill set, and the knowledge of someone on a fractional basis. You still get all of me. You get all of my skills and knowledge when you hire someone like me, or a fractional CRO, or a fractional COO, or CFO.
I mean, and I know this is kind of a rough question to answer probably, but how many companies can you handle at once? Like, how many clients can you have on an ongoing basis at the same time? Because I would think that would be a tough one.
It is. I would say switching context is probably the hardest part of doing what I do for me. And it's a little different for everyone. So I've seen fractionals who come in and will work full half-time or even full-time for a specific company, whether that's a shorter period of time, or fractionals who come in who are just available on demand, who might work 2 or 3 hours a month for a specific company. How I can speak to how I've managed mine. The majority of my clients are quarter fractional, meaning they get roughly a quarter of my time. Now, in the real world, that would cut down to 10 hours a week. you and I both know I work more than 40 hours a week. So they're
Sure.
all getting
Yeah.
a little bit more than 10 hours, but I also don't track my time. They're getting an estimate of a quarter of my time. As I said earlier, my value is not in my hours spent. My value is in the knowledge and the experience.
Yeah. It's about output, right?
But exactly, but they're getting
Yeah.
the output, and I can manage. And how I tend to set myself up is roughly 75% of my time is allocated. So at any given time, I could have 3 quarterly fractional clients. And then the rest of that time is spent on the other kind of quarter of my life, if you will, or of my business life, I should say, is spent on running my business, on developing my business, on partnering with the people who work with me and for me, like my accountant, who I mentioned
Yep.
earlier. And then in other project work. So I have the luxury of also helping other clients on not necessarily a fractional basis, but more of a project or consultative basis.
Yeah. So what happens in a situation where they got a quarter of your time, supposedly? So to the company standpoint, they're getting you 10 hours a week roughly, although you're not nickel and diming them like, hey, I worked 10 and a half hours this week. You owe me for a half an hour, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens if it starts to get more than that, like excessively more, not like on a 1 week basis, but a consistent, now you're working 20 hours a week. What do you do in that? You've signed a contract. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, knock on wood, it hasn't happened excessively in the few years that I've been doing this yet. But it does happen. And so it's constant communication. It's really good communication about where we are. I've actually had both uplifts and down drops in my invoicing for clients who are either on kind of slow period, weren't needing me. And I'm usually the one who brings that up too, by the way. Hey, you guys aren't really taking advantage of me right now. I'm going to invoice a little less this month, and we'll roll it back up if we've got more projects going next month, or if I'm talking to more people next month. So I'm able to, through that communication and really solidly understanding capacity, we're able to prioritize what I'm doing for each company, and I've managed to keep it down. Now, exactly as you said, it comes in ebbs and tides for sure. So sometimes I won't have a couple of hours of things to do with a client, and then the following week I'm working, 20, 25 hours for them based on kind of projects coming and going. As I said, I've been very fortunate that that's come, they've balanced each other along the way. And I haven't been overly inundated at any given, in any given month or week. They're busy seasons. Certainly, we all know that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of balanced itself in that one.
And how are you liking having your own business, being your own, being self-employed, being an entrepreneur? Because that's not for everybody. Let's face it.
Yeah, my boss is rough. She's really demanding. She's kind of pushy. She has high expectations of me. I'm used to that.
That's
Working
funny.
in startup tech, that's how my bosses have always felt. So I'm no different. I would say, the things that I was most worried about going into this were self-motivation. Right? It's that idea of kind of having the other excited parties who are building a business together behind me and keeping that motivation and that energy going. Well, it turns out that still exists. It exists within my clients. I get to work with 3 scaling companies instead of just one. And that energy is definitely here all day, every day. So my enthusiasm's still there. My motivation's still there. Those were my biggest concerns. People ask me if I get lonely being a party of one. I absolutely don't. I get to hang out with people like Paul.
I was going to say you're meeting with. I would think that would be better because you're meeting with lots more people than just
so many more people. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, and I don't expect to have numbers here, but do you ever get stock options as far as part of your compensation package, or how does that work? So I guess it's all on the board, all on the table, correct?
I do. Yeah, you can negotiate. That's another one of the values of being, a third party or independent in some way. You can negotiate in whatever way works for you to negotiate. I do have clients who have offered me stock options. One as part of the overall compensation package for what I'm doing with and for them. The other as basically a gift after having worked with them for a certain amount of time, wanted to allocate that, again, that energy that I was talking about, that motivation and drive to help them be successul. They wanted to put that encouragement on my plate. And so it was.
Yeah, that's nice. It must be rewarding to know that, hey, look, we're adults. I don't need someone to coddle me and pat me on the back every day, but every once in a while, it is nice to get a, hey, you've done a great job for us. We are humans.
Well, I know because of my experience, the value that I'm contributing or adding to each of my clients. What's great is seeing them say, we know you are additive also. We know there is a value beyond what we would have if you weren't here.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Do you think you'd ever go back to working for a company again?
I'm a grown woman. Never say never.
Yep.
I have learned that lesson more than once in life. It is not my goal.
Yeah.
And I would think that, when I went into this in the first place, a lot of people made the assumption, how long is that going to be until, and then you're going to go work for one of your clients, and then you're going to find a client and you're going to want to work full time for. No, my goal was to build my business so that I can have this variety, so I can have this reach across a number of companies, and help a number of companies grow, and not just grow the right way.
Yeah.
So I love what I'm doing, and my goal is absolutely to keep building on this and not to go back in a singular company.
And you mentioned it, and I'll question you on this. What does happen in your mind if these companies grow and they need a full-time HR person? Then what do you do?
It's already happened. I lose my babies. I have helped fill out HR departments and then hug them goodbye.
Wow.
Yeah, it's part of it. It's part of growing and scaling. And honestly, that's how my whole career has gone. It's one of the exciting things, right? I work for companies that either, let's face it, circle the drain or go on to bigger things outside of me. I have no interest in working for big enterprise companies, so I have to leave sometimes. And success means sending the kid off to college. And so that's what I do. And I help make sure that they're all set up properly, that they have a good foundation, that they've got good values and culture in place, and much less the policies and the processes and the programs in place, so that when we're hiring for my replacement, for my ongoing, to build that HR system to move forward, we're easily able to put it in good hands.
Yeah, and they always have you there as a consultant as well, right?
Yeah. In fact, I've had a couple of companies that I've signed off and, said my goodbyes and have not been let go of.
Yeah. And the good news is, like anything else, is I would think that you can use them as references, or they may say, hey, I know someone that needs some help, give them a call. I mean, because a lot of these people communicate, right?
You got it. And it's cool because for all of these organizations I'm working with, and I told you at the beginning of our conversation how I built my business was on these partners and these firms that I collaborate with within the organizations. And the more of those organizations I get to work with, the more of those partners I get to meet and partner with. And so that continues to expand my network, incrementally. Exponentially.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, networking. I mean, I know that just being in sales for 40 years, anytime I've needed to look for a new job, I don't know if I've ever gotten a job from like LinkedIn or a recruiter. It's always been, okay, here's my network of people. Let's start making calls and let everyone know I'm available. And invariably I'll land something,
Absolutely. From my very first job, that's how it went.
Yeah. We won't ask you how long that's been, Lisa, because it's not gentlemanly to ask a woman, how long she's been doing it, because that will lead to how old you are. And I'm not going to do that.
Okay, I won't allow it, but I will say that my very first job in this space was in recruiting, in a recruiting firm. And my big sister worked at Dell Computers, and they were working with this recruiting firm, and she knew this recruiting firm needed some help. They needed some assistance, and she introduced me to that firm. I became their office manager for a recruiting firm, and everything changed from there.
Nice. Now, you're saying your sister worked at Dell years ago. She's not still at Dell, is she?
She's not. She hasn't been at Dell in years and years either. So you didn't have to age me. I just double-aged myself.
Okay, there you go. Well, it's you should wear. I always feel like you should wear badges. You wear age as a badge of honor, right?
I agree. It's experience. It's knowledge, right?
Yeah. So great.
It's why I'm valuable, frankly, right? We've seen more, and I say all the time too. We've all heard this. I didn't make this up. the lessons in your experience don't come from the successes. The lessons in your experience come from the trips and the falls and the failures. The
Yeah.
success is often luck.
Just
Right?
by
The
osmosis.
right way, and
That
it leads to success. And there are things under that. Hey, we saw this improve because of us doing this other thing. But really, you learn the what not to do through all of the
yeah.
falls and the failures. And I think
You
that's
know,
where experience comes in.
that's a great point, because I've often said, I try to do this, but I don't do as much as I should. When you win a deal, sometimes if you have a heart-to-heart conversation, customers will reveal this, but say, hey, why did you go with us? But the opposite is, why did you not go with us? Why did we lose? And sometimes salespeople, we're all afraid to ask those questions because you don't want to hear the truth sometimes.
And the much more important answer to get, right? You don't get to pivot. You don't get to fix it if you don't know where the problems are.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, well, again, let's recap a little bit, Lisa. Why would someone give us a recap of why someone would be looking for a fractional HR specialist executive, and then we'll go from there.
In my case, it's so that you can do more and have the knowledge and experience and guidance of someone who's got that credibility, who's got that background for a much less expensive cost structure. That you can get, I am able to, and at a fractional level, we are able to scale you to the next step without you already being at that next step.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. And you hit it right in the head from a cost perspective. Is there a size company that would be better for you? And you say startup. Sometimes startups that are funded have hundreds of employees or versus like 3 people. Like what would be the sweet spot for you?
I would say seed to C. So the funding level would be seed to C, 2 to 200 people.
Okay.
And I would say, and that will vary too. I'd say, you've got 2 or 3 folks starting to, where do we even get started? How do we hire our first engineer? Whatever the question is, that's not a fractional consulting role. That is me helping you helping you out, get started as a consultant. And then as you scale up, now you're 20 people and you need to get some payroll in place and you need to figure out some policy. We don't really know what our mission is going to be here. We just had this product idea. Then that starts to, things start evolving and start building. Then we start moving into, the 30, 40, 50 people, and we've got compliance. We've got healthcare changes. We've got bigger things. We've got performance management and making sure that we've got real goals and communication systems set up. So it depends on where you are, how much you would need. But that's exactly the value of fractional.
Nice. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. Well, I personally see the value in it because I've seen so many startups over the years, right? Not really worked for a true startup, but I've worked for some small companies, and I've seen it as they grow. They're like, we really kind of need a sales manager, but we really can't afford one. Or we really need a COO to offload some of those responsibilities from, the VPs or the presidents. But it's that, when do you do it, right? When it's always a tough call.
It's easy to fall into the idea of, we need HR, so I know a good admin who can probably do some of these things. Or we need to build out our sales. I know a guy who is a good salesperson once. They can probably build out the infrastructure.
You're right.
You're setting yourself up for a much rougher road as you're scaling. So this is that opportunity to do best of and really build the foundation to scale on.
Beautiful. Well, I think we covered a lot of what you do and the industry in general, because really that's the point. One of the points of these things, like, get the word out there, educate people, and have a little fun while we're doing it.
Well, good. I hope you did. I sure did.
I did. Well, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm at lisa@lmnhr.com as well. But very easy to hunt down and more than happy to have a conversation. I say my first couple of hours of consultation are always free because I love to get to know new startups and growing companies and hear what you're up against and what your goals are.
Nice. Well, we'll end on that note, Lisa. I really enjoyed having you on the show. This was great, and look forward to continued success for you.
What a pleasure to hang out with you again. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, that's it for another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. This is Paul DeLegro signing off. Until next time.